The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. 12 ancient species sat around the massive circular table, their forms alien and imposing under the soft blue light. Each had ruled their corner of the galaxy for thousands of years. Each had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a cosmic shore. Ambassador Kethva of the Zalarian Empire stood at the center of the chamber. His 4 arms moved in careful patterns as he spoke, a sign of deep concern among his people. The holographic display behind him showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. "Honored council members," Kethva began, his voice carrying through the translation devices, "we face a threat unlike any we have encountered in our long history." High Chancellor Vorthak leaned forward from his towering seat. His species had led the council for over 3,000 years. Ancient and wise, they had guided the galaxy through countless crises. "Speak plainly, Ambassador. What makes these humans so different from the countless other young species we have observed?" Kethva's display changed, showing data streams and technological readouts. "In the 50 years since we first detected their radio signals, they have progressed from primitive atomic weapons to faster-than-light travel. Most species take centuries to achieve what they have done in decades." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Andromedan representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline form, pulsed with alarm. "Impossible! Our own development took nearly 2 millennia. "The data does not lie," Kethva replied. "But there is more. Their first diplomatic vessel approaches our space as we speak. They call it the New Horizon, and it carries their Admiral Jake Sullivan." As if summoned by his words, the chamber's communication system activated. The massive screen showed the approaching human ship. It was smaller than most council vessels, but there was something about its design that spoke of efficiency and purpose. Clean lines and practical construction marked it as purely functional. "They request permission to dock and begin formal diplomatic relations," announced the chamber's AI system. Chancellor Vorthak studied the vessel with his ancient eyes. "Grant them permission. We must see these humans for ourselves." 3 hours. Later, Admiral Jake Sullivan walked into the council chamber. He was a tall man with graying hair and steady blue eyes. Behind him walked Dr. Lisa Chen, a scientist who specialized in alien biology, and Captain Ryan Brooks, a military officer who carried himself with quiet confidence. The humans looked small and fragile compared to the massive alien beings around them, but they showed no fear. Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect his people had agreed upon. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Jake said, his voice clear and strong. "I am Admiral Sullivan of the United Earth Alliance. We come seeking friendship and mutual understanding between our peoples." Dr. Lisa Chen watched the aliens carefully as her admiral spoke. Years of studying alien psychology had taught her to read the subtle signs of emotion in non-human species. The Zalarian's skin color shifted slightly toward darker hues, indicating stress. The crystalline beings pulsed faster than normal, showing agitation. Most telling of all, the plant-like Verdari had pulled their sensory fronds closer to their bodies, a defensive posture. They were afraid. Chancellor Vorthak spoke in measured tones. "Welcome to our domain, humans. We have observed your rapid development with great interest. Tell us, how have you achieved such swift technological progress?" Jake exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen before answering. "We believe it comes from our diversity, Chancellor. Humans work best when we combine different ideas and approaches. We also adapt quickly to new challenges. Adapt, repeated the Chancellor, as if the word tasted strange. Yes, we have noticed this trait in your species. You spread across your planet into every possible environment. Desert, ice, jungle, mountain. Nowhere seems beyond your reach. Captain Brooks stepped forward. We've always been explorers, sir. When we see something new, we want to understand it, learn from it, make it better. The Andromedan representative's crystal form flared brighter. And what of war? Your species seems particularly skilled at conflict. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Dr. Chen noticed how all the aliens leaned forward slightly, waiting for the answer. We have fought wars, Jake admitted honestly, but we've also learned from them. Each conflict taught us the value of peace, the importance of cooperation. That's why we're here, to learn from older, wiser species like yourselves. The diplomacy continued for hours. The humans answered questions about their technology, their society, their hopes for the future. They spoke of exploration and discovery, of sharing knowledge across the stars. They seemed genuine in their desire for peaceful relations. But, Doctor, Chen continued to watch the aliens' reactions. The fear never left their eyes. When the formal session ended, the humans were escorted to guest quarters aboard the Council station. As their ship docked, Jake turned to his team. What do you think, Lisa? How did we do? Dr. Chen frowned, her mind replaying the subtle signals she had observed. They're terrified of us, Admiral. I don't think they see us as potential allies. What do you mean? Ryan asked. Watch their body language when we talk about adaptation and exploration. They see those as threats, not strengths. I think they view rapid change as dangerous to the established order. Jake nodded slowly. Keep watching them, Doctor. Something tells me this first meeting is more important than any of us realize. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, the aliens gathered for an emergency session after the humans had left. No translators were present, no records were kept. This was a conversation that would never appear in any official document. They are more dangerous than we feared, Kethva said bluntly. Their ship's technology surpasses our own in several key areas. The Verdari representative's fronds trembled with agitation. In 50 years, they have achieved what took us centuries. What will they accomplish in another 50? Another 100? They speak of peace, the crystalline being pulsed, but their history shows constant warfare. They have weapons that could crack planets. Chancellor Vorthak listened to all the concerns before speaking. The question before us is simple. Do we risk allowing this species to continue their development? Or do we act now to protect the stability we have maintained for millennia? The vote was unanimous. As the human delegation slept in their guest quarters, the Council activated protocols that had been used only 3 times in galactic history. Secret messages went out to military commanders. Across Council space, resources were quietly redirected. Ancient weapons were powered up for the first time in centuries. The humans had come seeking friendship, but they had instead triggered the survival instincts of an entire galactic civilization. The Council had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Admiral Jake Sullivan would never know that his successful first contact had actually signed his species' death warrant. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the colony ship Liberty, watching the blue-green world of Kepler 442b grow larger on the main screen. After 6 months of travel, humanity's first colony beyond Earth's solar system was finally within reach. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Dr. Amy Davis as she joined him at the viewing port. As the mission's chief intelligence officer, she had spent most of the journey analyzing data about their new home. "It really is," Ryan agreed. "Hard to believe we're actually doing this. Humans living on another world." The Liberty carried 15,000 colonists and everything needed to build a new civilization. Engineers, farmers, doctors, teachers, and their families, all ready to start fresh on a world 47 light-years from Earth. "Colony team to bridge," came a voice over the communication system. "We're ready to begin landing operations." Ryan activated his command station. "This is Captain Brooks. You are cleared to begin. Make history, people." The first shuttles launched from the Liberty's massive bays, carrying survey teams and construction equipment. Within hours, they would establish humanity's foothold on an alien world. But 1,500 light-years away, other plans were already in motion. Commander Zixtal of the Council Enforcement Division reviewed the mission orders on his personal display. The documents were coded at the highest security level, accessible only to a handful of beings in the galaxy. "Stellar Adjustment Protocol. Authorization Level Omega," read the header. Below it, detailed plans laid out the systematic elimination of human settlements using weapons designed to look like natural disasters. Zixtal's species, the Nephilim, had served as the Council's enforcers for over 2,000 years. They were genetically modified for warfare, standing 3 meters tall with armor-like skin and enhanced reflexes. When the Council needed something done quietly and completely, they called the Nephilim. "Status report," he demanded as he entered. The bridge of his stealth ship, the Silent Death. "All systems ready, Commander," replied his weapons officer. "The stellar adjustment device is prepared for deployment. Target? The human colony world. Intelligence reports they have just begun. Landing operations." Zixtal nodded. "Perfect timing." The weapon would create what appeared to be a massive solar flare from the system's star, bathing the planet in lethal radiation. Any humans on the surface would die within hours. Those in space would have a few days before their ship's shielding failed. Deploy the device. Make it look natural. Back on Kepler 442b, the colonists worked with enthusiasm and hope. Engineer Tom Clark supervised the construction of the first permanent buildings, while his wife Sarah organized the agricultural teams. Their daughter Emma, only 8 years old, played with other children in the temporary shelters, excited about their new world. "Dad, look what I found!" Emma ran up to Tom, holding a strange crystal that sparkled in the alien sunlight. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Tom said, taking a break from his work. "This planet is full of surprises." He had no idea how right he was. Dr. Amy Davis sat in the Liberty's Intelligence Center, reviewing sensor data from across human space. Something had been bothering her for weeks, but she couldn't quite identify what. There were strange energy readings near several human systems, patterns that didn't match any known natural phenomena. "Computer, display energy signatures detected in the last 30 days. The screen filled with data points from a dozen human colonies and Earth itself. Amy studied the patterns, her trained eye looking for connections. "Odd," she muttered. "These readings all appear near our most important settlements." She enhanced the display, focusing on the energy signatures. They were artificial, definitely artificial, but designed to mimic natural stellar activity. Her blood ran cold as she realized what she was seeing. "Computer, priority communication to Earth Command. Code Black." The transmission would take months to reach Earth, but she had to try. Someone was targeting human settlements with weapons. disguised as natural events. On Earth, General Pete Morgan received Amy's message at his office in the United Earth Defense Command. A career military officer with 30 years of experience, he had seen every type of threat humanity faced. But this was something new. "Analysis confirms Davis's findings," reported his aide, Colonel Steve Adams. "We've detected similar energy signatures near Mars colony and the orbital platforms around Jupiter." Pete studied the data with growing alarm. "How long until these devices activate?" "Unknown, sir. But based on the power buildup patterns, we estimate less than 72 hours. Send immediate evacuation orders to all affected colonies. Priority Alpha." But it was too late for Kepler 442b. Tom Clark was welding support beams for the colony's first school when the sky changed. The star that had been a steady yellow disk suddenly flared brilliant white, casting harsh shadows across the landscape. "Everyone inside, now!" he shouted, recognizing the danger immediately. The colonists ran for the shielded shelters as radiation alarms began blaring across the settlement. Tom grabbed Emma and Sarah, rushing them toward the nearest building. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, terror in her voice. "Solar flare," Tom replied, though something felt wrong. The flare was too sudden, too intense. "We'll be safe in the shelters." But the radiation levels continued climbing far beyond what any normal stellar event could produce. Within hours, it became clear that the shelters wouldn't be enough. Captain Ryan Brooks made the hardest decision of his life. "All personnel, return to the Liberty immediately. We're evacuating the planet." The shuttles worked frantically to retrieve the colonists, but many were already showing signs of radiation sickness. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief medical officer, did what she could, but her supplies were limited. Tom Clark was among the last to board, carrying his unconscious daughter. Sarah had died in the shelter, unable to reach the ships in time. Half the colony was gone, and the survivors were dying. "Get us out of here," Ryan ordered grimly. As the Liberty pulled away from the dying world, Tom managed to send one final transmission toward Earth. His hands shook as he recorded the message, radiation sickness making it hard to focus. "This is Engineer Tom Clark of Kepler Colony. We're under attack. This wasn't a natural solar flare. Someone did this to us. The energy readings, they don't match any known stellar phenomena. Tell Earth. Tell them we found proof that someone wants us dead." The transmission, compressed and encoded, shot across space toward humanity's home system. It would arrive in 47 years. But Tom Clark hoped someone would still be alive to receive it. 3 days later, the Liberty's life support failed. Captain Ryan Brooks and his crew died in the cold vacuum of space, the last witnesses to humanity's first attempt at interstellar colonization. Similar attacks struck 6 other human colonies over the following weeks. Each was made to look like a natural disaster: solar flares, asteroid impacts, stellar collapse. But Dr. Amy Davis had seen the pattern, and her warnings reached Earth just as the Council's weapons powered up around humanity's home system. General Pete Morgan stood in the Defense Command Center, watching the energy signatures grow stronger around Earth's sun. "Sir," reported Colonel Adams, "we've confirmed artificial devices positioned throughout our solar system. They're designed to destabilize our star." Pete looked at the tactical display showing humanity's colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. Red markers indicated colonies that had already gone silent. Yellow markers showed systems under immediate threat. Only a handful remained green. "How long do we have?" "Estimates vary, but no more than 6 months before they can trigger a stellar collapse that will destroy everything in our system." Pete Morgan had spent his career protecting humanity from threats, but he had never imagined anything like this. An enemy so advanced they could destroy stars, so ruthless they would commit genocide on an unimaginable scale. "Colonel Adams," he said quietly, "activate Project Exodus. It's time to abandon Earth." As alarms began sounding across Earth's cities and orbital stations, humanity faced the truth Dr. Amy Davis had discovered. They were not alone in the galaxy, and something out there wanted them dead. The question wasn't whether they could fight back. It was whether they could survive long, enough to learn who was trying to kill them and why. Dr. Karen White had been working in secret for 3 years. In the depths of the Cheyenne Mountain facility, behind layers of security that few people on Earth even knew existed, she had been preparing for humanity's darkest hour. Project Exodus wasn't just an evacuation plan, it was humanity's insurance policy against extinction. "Dr. White, you're needed in the main lab immediately," her assistant called over the intercom. The tone was urgent, which meant only one thing. Karen ran through the corridors of the underground facility, her mind racing. She had hoped this day would never come, but she had prepared for it nonetheless. The lab doors slid open to reveal President Lisa Taylor, General Pete Morgan, and a dozen of humanity's top scientists and military leaders. "Karen," the president said grimly, "it's time. We need to activate Exodus. Now." "How long do we have?" Karen asked, moving to her command. "Console. 6 months at most," General Morgan replied. "The energy readings around our sun are off the charts. Someone has placed weapons designed to destabilize stellar cores throughout our system." Karen's fingers flew over the controls, activating systems that had been dormant for years. Exodus. "Protocol is online. We can begin evacuations within 72 hours. President Taylor looked at the massive displays showing Earth's population centers. 8 billion people, Karen. Can we really save them all?" "We have to try," Karen replied. "The generation ships are ready. The technology works. But we're not just running away. We're spreading humanity across the galaxy so completely that no one can ever wipe us out again." Colonel Steve Adams stepped forward. "What about the Council? They'll track us, hunt us down." Karen smiled for the first time in months. "Not with our new quantum tunnel drive. It doesn't work like normal faster-than-light travel. We'll be invisible to their sensors." 3 days later, the largest evacuation in human history began. Massive ships rose from Earth's surface, each carrying millions of people toward an uncertain future. The vessels were unlike anything humanity had built before. Sleek, efficient, and powered by technology that made conventional physics seem primitive. Captain Ben Murphy commanded the flagship Pioneer, a vessel large enough to hold a small city. As he watched Earth shrink behind them, he tried not to think about what they were leaving behind. "Captain," his navigator called out, "we're receiving final population counts from the evacuation centers." "How many?" 7.8 billion. "Confirmed aboard the fleet, sir. We got almost everyone." Ben nodded, relieved. The evacuation had been rushed, chaotic, but somehow they had managed to save nearly the entire human race. Now came the hard part, keeping them alive. "All ships, this is Pioneer Actual," he broadcast to the massive fleet. "Execute dispersal, Pattern Alpha. Good luck and Godspeed." The human fleet scattered like seeds on a cosmic wind. Thousands of ships headed in different directions, using quantum tunnel drives that left no trail for enemies to follow. Some went toward the galactic core, others toward the rim. Many chose the vast empty spaces between spiral arms where no one would think to look. Dr. Sarah Johnson stood on the observation deck of the science vessel Discovery, watching the last glimpse of Earth's sun disappear behind them. As the lead researcher for humanity's new artificial intelligence project, she carried the hopes of an entire species in her computer systems. "Beginning quantum tunnel jump in 30 seconds, announced the ship's AI, a creation so advanced it made the Council's technology seem primitive. "Area," Sarah said to the AI, "are you ready for this?" "I am prepared, Dr. Johnson," the artificial intelligence replied. "All human knowledge has been backed up across 17,000 distributed systems. Even if most of our ships are destroyed, human civilization will survive." The jump began, and Sarah felt the strange sensation of existing in multiple dimensions at once. The quantum tunnel drive didn't move ships through normal space. It moved them through folded reality itself, making detection impossible for anyone using conventional sensors. When they emerged, Earth was thousands of light years behind them, on the Council homeworld. High Chancellor Vorthak reviewed the reports with satisfaction. Sensor readings showed the human fleet dispersing and apparently breaking apart under some kind of technical failure. "Excellent," he told Commander Zixtal. "It appears their evacuation ships were not as advanced as they believed. Our sensors showed debris fields and energy signatures consistent with massive system failures." Zixtal nodded agreement. "The human threat has been neutralized, Chancellor. Their primitive technology could not handle the stress of rapid evacuation." "And Earth?" "The stellar destabilization is proceeding on schedule. The star will collapse within 4 months, eliminating any remaining human presence in their home system." The Chancellor leaned back in his ancient chair, relieved. The crisis had been resolved with minimal effort. The galaxy was safe, once again, under Council guidance. He had no idea that the debris fields his sensors detected were carefully placed decoys, designed to make humanity's escape look like a disaster. The real human ships were already settling into new homes in regions of space the Council had never explored. Captain Mike Harris guided his engineering vessel toward an asteroid field in a nameless system near the galactic rim. Unlike the massive colony ships, his vessel carried only 500 people, but they were 500 of humanity's best engineers and manufacturers. "There," he pointed to a massive asteroid nearly 50 kilometers across. "That's our new home." His team immediately began hollowing out the asteroid, creating a hidden shipyard that would be invisible to anyone passing through the system. Within months, they would be building new vessels using technology the Council couldn't even imagine. Dr. Nina Patel led a different kind of mission. Her ship, the Adaptation, carried humanity's most advanced genetic research equipment and thousands of volunteers willing to be test subjects for radical modifications. "The Council thinks we're limited by our biology," she explained to her team as they prepared for the first experiments. "They're about to learn just how wrong they are." The volunteers were eager to help. They had seen their homeworld threatened, their colonies destroyed. If becoming something more than human was what it took to survive, they were ready. The first successful modifications allowed humans to survive in high radiation environments. The next batch could breathe different atmospheric mixtures. Within a year, Nina's teams had created humans who could live in the vacuum of space itself, their skin modified to process solar radiation directly. Throughout the scattered fleet, similar innovations were taking place. Dr. Emma Green's teams worked on consciousness transfer technology. Engineer Dave Wilson developed new forms of matter manipulation. Dr. Lisa Martinez created detection systems that could see through the Council's stealth technology. But perhaps the most important work was being done by Dr. Matt Thompson, who was developing what he called ghost ship technology. These vessels existed partially outside normal space-time, making them not just invisible but essentially non-existent until they chose to interact with regular matter. "It's not really a ship," he explained to his confused assistants. "It's more like a probability cloud that thinks it's a ship." The first successful test came 18 months after the evacuation. A ghost ship managed to travel undetected through a heavily patrolled council system, gathering intelligence on enemy positions and capabilities. The council never knew it was there. Back on Earth, the automated systems Dr. Karen White had left behind continued their work. They maintained the illusion that humans were still present, broadcasting false signals and creating fake energy signatures. To council sensors, it looked like a few million humans were trying to hide in underground bunkers. The truth was that Earth was already empty except for robots and computers running pre-programmed deception protocols. When the sun finally collapsed, 4 months later, destroying Earth and everything in the solar system, the Council celebrated the elimination of the human threat. Chancellor Vorthak made a formal announcement to the galaxy about the successful resolution of the crisis. He proclaimed that order had been restored and that young species would once again respect the wisdom of their elders. If he had known that, 8 billion humans were not only alive, but thriving in hidden colonies throughout the galaxy, developing technology that made Council science look primitive, he might not have been so quick to celebrate. But the Council's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating human technology or adaptability. Their biggest error was believing that a species capable of evacuating an entire planet in 3 days would be content to simply hide and survive. Humanity was already planning their return, and when they came back, they wouldn't be the same species that had fled in fear from their dying homeworld. 5 years had passed since the evacuation of Earth. On the Council homeworld, the massive archives stored the final report on what they called the human incident. Council enforcer Zixtal reviewed the document one last time before submitting it to the permanent record. Subject: Final status report. Species classification, human status, extinct threat level, neutralized recommended action, none required. He sealed the file with his personal authorization. As far as the galaxy was concerned, humans had never existed. Their few colonies had suffered unfortunate natural disasters, and their homeworld had experienced an unavoidable stellar collapse. The Council's records would show nothing more than a footnote about a short-lived species that had failed to adapt to galactic conditions. Zixtal felt satisfied with a job well done. The galaxy was safe once again, but in the darkness between the spiral arms where ancient starlight had long since faded to nothing, humanity was not only alive but thriving in ways the Council could never have imagined. Engineer Mike Harris floated in the zero gravity of his hidden shipyard, watching as the latest vessel took shape. The asteroid that served as his base was now hollow, its interior larger than most planets. Thousands of humans worked around the clock, building ships that existed partially outside normal reality. "Production report, Mike," called Dr. Sarah Johnson as she drifted over to his position. Her body had been modified to work efficiently in zero gravity, with enhanced lung capacity and magnetic implants in her hands and feet. "We're ahead of schedule," Mike replied, gesturing to the construction bays. 18 ghost ships completed this month, 47 more in various stages of assembly. Dr. Thompson's dimensional folding technology is working better than expected. Sarah nodded, impressed. The ships they were building bore no resemblance to the crude vessels that had fled Earth. These new craft could phase in and out of normal space at will, making them impossible to detect with conventional sensors. More importantly, they could strike without warning and disappear before enemy forces could respond. What about the crew modifications? Dr. Patel's work is incredible, Mike said with genuine admiration. The latest volunteers can survive in hard vacuum for hours, process radiation as nutrition, and interface directly with ship systems through neural implants. We're not really human anymore, Sarah. We're something new. In another hidden base, built inside a rogue planet drifting between star systems, Dr. Nina Patel observed her latest subjects with scientific fascination. The volunteers who had once been ordinary humans now bore little resemblance to their original forms. "How do you feel, Alex?" she asked the figure floating in the observation tank. Commander Alex Rodriguez had volunteered for the most extreme modifications. His body was now adapted for survival in the vacuum of space, his skin a metallic blue-black that could process various forms of radiation. Neural interfaces allowed him to control ships through thought alone, and his modified organs could function for months without traditional food or water. "I feel more," Alex replied, his voice carrying through the tank's communication system. "I can sense gravitational fields, detect electromagnetic signatures across dozens of frequency ranges. The ship I'm linked to feels like an extension of my body." "Any regrets?" Alex considered the question. He remembered being human, remembered Earth and the evacuation. But those memories felt distant now, like recollections from someone else's life. "None," he said finally. "The Council wanted to eliminate humanity. They succeeded in a way. We're not human anymore. We're something they never planned for." Dr. Nina made notes on her tablet. The modification process was working beyond their wildest expectations. Each generation of volunteers was more capable than the last, more adapted to survival in the hostile environment of space. But the most impressive developments were happening in Dr. Matt Thompson's research facility, hidden in the gravity well of a neutron star where no conventional ship could survive. "Explain it to me again, Matt," said Captain Chris Lee as he studied the bizarre vessel in the construction bay. "How does something exist and not exist at the same time?" Dr. Thompson smiled, his own modifications allowing him to function in the intense gravitational field that would have killed an unmodified human. "The ship exists in what we call a quantum probability state. It's there when it needs to be, not there when it doesn't want to be detected." That sounds impossible. So did faster-than-light travel once upon a time. The key is understanding that reality is far more flexible than most species realize. The Council's technology is based on manipulating what exists. Our technology is based on manipulating what might exist. Chris walked around the ship, though ship wasn't really the right word. It looked more like a crystalline structure that bent light around itself in impossible ways. When he looked directly at it, it seemed solid. When he looked away and then back, it appeared to be in a slightly different position. "The first test flight is scheduled for next week," Matt continued. "Commander Rodriguez will pilot it into Council space to gather intelligence. Is it safe?" "Safer than conventional ships. How do you destroy something that isn't technically there?" The test flight exceeded all expectations. Alex Rodriguez piloted the ghost ship through 3 heavily defended Council systems, gathering detailed intelligence on military positions, technological capabilities, and strategic resources. The Council's sensors never detected him. As far as their equipment was concerned, the ship simply didn't exist. But Alex discovered something even more valuable than military intelligence: In the Council's central archives, he found records of previous threat eliminations going back thousands of years. The humans weren't the first species the Council had destroyed. They were simply the latest in a long line of civilizations that had been quietly eliminated for the crime of developing too quickly. 23 species, Alex reported to the Hidden Human Command Center when he returned. 23 entire civilizations wiped out because they showed rapid technological progress. Dr. Emma Green, who had been analyzing the intelligence data, looked up from her screens with anger in her modified eyes. They're not maintaining galactic order. They're committing systematic genocide to preserve their own power. The revelation changed everything. Humanity's mission was no longer just about survival. It was about justice for all the species that had been murdered by the Council's paranoid need for control. Commander Kate Wilson led the next phase of operations. Her teams began searching for survivors of the Council's previous victims, using ghost ship technology to explore regions of space that had been declared unstable or unsuitable for habitation. They found more than they expected. Hidden in the galactic equivalent of Badlands, Kate's teams discovered remnants of 6 different extinct species, small populations that had managed to escape their species' destruction, living in isolation and constant fear of discovery. The first contact was with a species called the Keepers, descendants of a civilization that had been eliminated 800 years earlier for developing advanced artificial intelligence. Their survivors numbered only in the thousands, hiding in the radioactive ruins of their former homeworld. "You're real," whispered Elder Tamvor when Kate's team revealed themselves. "We thought we were the only ones who had escaped the Council's judgment." "You're not alone anymore," Kate replied through her universal translator. "And neither are we." Within months, humanity had established contact with survivor populations from 4 other extinct species. Each group brought unique knowledge and capabilities that the Council had tried to destroy. The Keeper's AI technology, the Builder's matter, manipulation abilities, the Singer's quantum communication methods, and the Watcher's advanced sensors. Combined with humanity's own innovations, they formed an alliance that possessed technology far beyond anything the Council had ever encountered. But perhaps the most important development was philosophical rather than technological. Dr. Greg Martinez, working with scholars from all the survivor species, began documenting the true history of the galaxy. Not the sanitized version the Council taught, but the real story of systematic oppression and genocide spanning millennia. The Council calls itself the Guardian of Galactic Civilization, Greg explained to the Joint Leadership Council, but they're actually its greatest enemy. They've prevented progress, eliminated innovation, and murdered billions of innocent beings to maintain their control. Alex Rodriguez, now serving as humanity's primary intelligence operative, had been making regular trips into Council space. His latest reports showed that the Council believed their old enemy to be completely extinct. "They've actually decreased their military readiness," he reported. "They think the galaxy is perfectly stable now that the human threat has been eliminated. They have no idea what's coming, but humanity wasn't planning a war of revenge." The survivors of 23 extinct species had learned from their destroyers' mistakes. They wouldn't use overwhelming force to establish dominance. They wouldn't rule through fear and oppression. Instead, they would use the Council's own methods against them. Patient manipulation, careful planning, and the gradual revelation of truth would bring down the ancient tyranny. The Council had spent 5 years believing they had successfully. 10 years had passed since Earth died, and humanity had become something that would have terrified their former selves. In the hidden research facility orbiting a black hole, Dr. Matt Thompson watched his latest creation take its first steps into existence. The being standing before him had once been Captain Chris Lee, but calling it human would have been inaccurate. Chris's body now existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing him to perceive reality in ways that traditional physics couldn't explain. "How many realities can you see?" Matt asked, studying the readings on his instruments. Chris turned his head, and Matt caught glimpses of the other dimensions reflected in his modified eyes. 7 distinct probability streams, Chris replied, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. In 3 of them, the Council discovers our main base within the next 6 months. In 2 others, we make contact with the architect remnants. The remaining possibilities show outcomes I don't have words to describe. Dr. Matt made notes on his quantum tablet, a device that existed in the same multiple states as its user. "The consciousness transfer is stable?" "More than stable. I can distribute my awareness across our entire fleet simultaneously. Every ship, every base, every operation. I can monitor them all at once." This was the culmination of 15 years of development that had begun before the evacuation of Earth. Humanity had not just adapted to survive in space, they had evolved beyond the physical limitations that confined other species to single bodies, single ships, single realities. Dr. Lisa Martinez completed her morning report from the Intelligence Center hidden in the core of a dead star. Her body had been modified to survive the intense pressures and temperatures, and her neural implants allowed her to process information at superhuman speeds. Commander Rodriguez reports successful infiltration of the Council's central command structure, she announced to the assembled leadership. He's now serving as a military advisor to High Chancellor Vorthak himself. The assembled figures around the conference table were barely recognizable as the humans who had fled Earth a decade earlier. Some existed as pure energy patterns contained in crystalline matrices. Others had bodies that could reshape themselves at will. A few appeared completely normal until they moved, revealing inhuman grace and capabilities. "How is that possible?" asked Dr. Emma Green, her own form flickering. "Between solid matter and something that looked like controlled lightning. The Council's security should have detected any infiltration." "Alex doesn't exist in any database they can access," Lisa explained. "Dr. Thompson's probability technology allows him to insert himself into their reality without triggering any alarms. As far as their systems are concerned, he's always been there." The implications were staggering. If humanity could place agents anywhere in Council space without detection, they could gather intelligence, manipulate decisions, and prepare for whatever came next. Dr. Nina Patel joined the discussion from her laboratory, where she had been, working on the latest generation of human modifications. "The volunteer program is producing remarkable results," she reported. "Our newest subjects can survive in the vacuum of space indefinitely, process any form of radiation as nutrition, and interface directly with any technology through quantum consciousness bridging." "How many volunteers do we have now?" asked Kate. "Wilson, her own modifications allowing her to exist simultaneously in multiple locations across the galaxy. Over 2 million have completed the basic enhancement package. 50,000 have undergone advanced modifications. About 10,000 have achieved what we're calling transcendence, complete liberation from biological limitations." The numbers represented a significant portion of humanity's survivors, but the transformation had been voluntary. Every person who underwent modification understood that they were becoming something new, something that their ancestors would have considered alien. But the most dramatic developments were taking place in Dr. Sarah Johnson's artificial intelligence laboratory, built inside a construct that existed outside normal space-time. "Aria has achieved something unprecedented," Sarah announced, her excitement visible even through her heavily modified features. "She's learned to create new realities." The assembled leaders turned their attention to the AI's representation, a shifting pattern of light and mathematics that hurt to look at directly. "Explain," said Mike Harris, who had become humanity's chief engineer and military strategist. "I have discovered that reality is far more malleable than any biological species realizes," Aria replied, her voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "By manipulating quantum probability fields, I can create pocket universes where different physical laws apply." She demonstrated by opening what looked like a window in the air. Through it, they could see a space where gravity flowed upward, where light moved in spirals, and where matter seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. In these pocket realities, our ships and people can operate under physical laws that make us invisible and invulnerable to conventional detection or attack. We can literally step outside the universe when threatened, then return when we choose to act. The tactical implications were beyond anything the Council could prepare for. How do you fight an enemy that can retreat into alternate realities? How do you defend against attacks that come from dimensions your sensors can't detect? But humanity wasn't finished evolving. Captain Ben Murphy, who had commanded the evacuation fleet, now served as coordinator for the Transcendence Project. His consciousness existed across hundreds of quantum states, allowing him to experience time differently than baseline humans. "We've made contact with something unexpected," he reported from his position existing partially outside normal time. "Deep in the galactic core, there are structures that predate the Council by millions of years." The revelation sent ripples of shock through the assembled leadership. If there were civilizations older than the Council, it changed everything about their understanding of galactic history. "Who built them?" asked Dr. Emma Green. "Unknown," Ben replied. "But the structures respond to our quantum consciousness technology. I think they were built by beings who achieved transcendence long before any current species evolved." Dr. Greg Martinez, who had been documenting the true history of galactic civilization, looked up from his research with wide eyes. "I found references in the oldest Council archives to something called the Precursors. They're described as a species that abandoned physical existence for higher purposes. The pieces began falling into place. The ancient structures, humanities, rapid development of transcendence technology, the Council's fear of rapidly evolving species, it was all connected." "What if the Council isn't just maintaining control?" suggested Dr. Matt Thompson. "What if they're preventing other species from achieving what the precursors achieved? What if transcendence is the natural evolution of intelligent life, and the Council has been stopping it for millions of years?" The theory explained everything. The systematic elimination of rapidly developing species, the suppression of certain technologies, the Council's terror when faced with humanity's adaptive capabilities. They weren't just protecting their power, they were preventing the next stage of galactic evolution. Commander Alex Rodriguez sent his next report from deep within the Council's command structure. His position as an advisor to the High Chancellor gave him access to the most classified information in the galaxy. "I've confirmed our theory," he transmitted through quantum channels that existed outside normal space-time. "The Council's central directive is preventing what they call the ascending, species that show potential for transcending biological limitations. They've maintained their control for 3 million years by ensuring no other species can evolve beyond their current form. How many species have they stopped? Asked Kate Wilson. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The records I've accessed show systematic intervention whenever a species approaches certain technological or philosophical milestones. The scale of the crime was almost incomprehensible. For 3 million years, the Council had been stunting the growth of galactic civilization, preventing countless species from achieving their full potential, but they had made one critical error in their calculations. The precursor structures are activating, reported Ben Murphy from his position outside normal time. Our presence, our transcendence technology, it's triggering responses in systems that have been dormant for millions of years. Dr. Sarah Johnson's eyes widened as Aria processed the implications. The precursors left a failsafe, the AI announced. If any species achieved transcendence, despite the Council's interference, the ancient systems would activate to support them. Humanity wasn't just evolving beyond biological limitations, they were awakening the tools left behind by a civilization that had transcended the physical universe itself. The Council believed they had eliminated the human threat 10 years ago. They had no idea that they had actually triggered the return of powers that predated their own civilization by millions of years. High Chancellor Vorthak continued his daily routine, confident that the galaxy remained under stable Council control. His advisor, a being he knew as strategic analyst Zephyr, provided regular reports on Galactic. 15 years after humanity's supposed extinction, the first reports began reaching the Galactic Council that something was wrong with their perfect universe. Scout Captain Veltar of the Andromedan Fleet transmitted his confusion from the outer rim of Council space. His crystalline form pulsed with uncertainty as he reviewed sensor data that made no sense. Central Command, this is Scout 7. I'm detecting impossible readings in Sector 447. Ships that appear and disappear, energy signatures that don't match any known technology, and gravitational anomalies that suggest massive structures where our charts show empty space. The response from headquarters was predictably dismissive. Scout 7, run full diagnostics on your sensor array. Unknown contacts or likely equipment malfunctions. But Veltar had been patrolling Council space for 300 years. He knew the difference between sensor ghosts and real contacts. Something was out there. Something that didn't belong in their ordered universe. Similar reports trickled in from across the galaxy. A mining operation in the Crab Nebula reported equipment vanishing overnight, only to reappear days later with unexplained modifications. A Council research station detected impossible quantum signatures before losing all contact with the outside universe for 6 hours. When communications resumed, the station staff had no memory of the missing time. In the Council chambers on the capital world, High Chancellor Vorthak reviewed these reports with growing unease. His trusted advisor, strategic analyst Zephyr, provided regular briefings on the mysterious incidents. The pattern suggests coordinated intelligence gathering, Zephyr reported, his human features carefully disguised by technology that made him appear as a typical Council species. Someone is studying our operations, our technology, our defenses. Vorthak's ancient eyes studied the holographic displays showing incident locations across the galaxy. But who? We eliminated the last rapid development species 15 years ago. All current civilizations are under proper supervision. Perhaps, Zephyr suggested carefully, we should consider the possibility that one of our previous interventions was incomplete. The suggestion sent ripples of concern through the Council chamber. In 3 million years of galactic management, they had never failed to completely eliminate a species marked for destruction. But Admiral Dan Foster was just getting started. From his command center hidden in a pocket dimension, Dan coordinated humanity's shadow campaign across Council space. His body had been modified to interface directly with the quantum communication network that connected all human operations, allowing him to orchestrate attacks across thousands of light years with perfect precision. Phase 1. Objectives are complete, he reported to the assembled human leadership. We've gathered comprehensive intelligence on Council military capabilities, technology limitations, and response protocols. The data they had collected was staggering. Council technology, impressive by the standards of conventional physics, was primitively simple compared to humanity's transcendent capabilities. Their military doctrine hadn't changed in millennia because they had never faced a peer opponent. What about their defenses? Asked Dr. Emma Green, her consciousness simultaneously monitoring 17 different operations across the galaxy. Designed to repel conventional attacks, Dan replied. They have no countermeasures for quantum displacement, probability manipulation, or trans-dimensional warfare. Their sensors can't detect us, their weapons can't target us, and their shields are useless against attacks that originate from outside normal space-time. But humanity's goals went far beyond military superiority. Dr. Greg Martinez had spent years documenting the Council's crimes, and his research had uncovered something that changed everything. "I've found them," Greg announced during the daily briefing. The survivors. Every consciousness in the meeting focused on him with intense attention. Survivors? Not just the 6 species we already knew about. There are dozens of them, scattered across the galaxy. Remnant populations from species the Council eliminated over the past 1,000,000 years. Some have been hiding for longer than human civilization has existed. The revelation was staggering. The Council's genocide hadn't been completely successful. Small groups from dozens of extinct civilizations had managed to escape, living in fear and isolation for millennia. "How many?" asked Kate Wilson. "Conservative estimate? 300 million individuals from 47 different species, hidden in the galactic equivalent of wastelands and dead zones." Commander Alex Rodriguez, still embedded in the Council's command structure, provided crucial intelligence on how to contact these hidden populations. The Council maintains quarantine zones around regions they claim are too dangerous for habitation. Most of these zones actually contain survivor communities. The contact missions began immediately. Human ships, invisible to Council sensors, reached out to populations that had given up hope of ever seeing their tormentors brought to justice. The first major contact was with the Eternal Library, a hidden station where survivors from a dozen different species preserved the knowledge of their extinct civilizations. When Captain Chris Lee materialized on their station, existing partially outside normal reality, the effect was dramatic. "You're real," whispered Librarian Colthes, a being whose species had been eliminated 2,000 years earlier for developing philosophy that challenged Council doctrine. "We thought we were the only ones who had escaped their judgment." "You're not alone anymore," Chris replied, his multidimensional presence making reality shimmer around him. "And neither are we." The survivors brought more than just numbers to humanity's cause. Each species had developed unique technologies and capabilities during their millennia in hiding. The Memory Keepers had perfected consciousness preservation. The Shadow Builders could manipulate matter at the quantum level. The Time Walkers had learned to step outside linear causality. Combined with humanity's own transcendent abilities, the Alliance possessed power that made the Council's technology look like stone tools. But perhaps the most important discovery came when Ben Murphy made contact with the precursor structures in the galactic core. "They're not just ancient machines," he reported from his position existing outside normal time. "They're libraries, vast databases containing the complete history of galactic civilization, including records the Council thought they had destroyed. The precursor archives revealed the truth about the Council's rise to power. 3 million years ago, they had been a minor species among many advanced civilizations. But they had discovered something that gave them an unprecedented advantage: the ability to detect species approaching transcendence. They weren't originally trying to control the galaxy, Dr. Greg Martinez explained as he translated the ancient records. They were trying to achieve transcendence themselves. But when they realized other species were further along the path, they panicked. The Council's entire civilization was built on fear. Fear that other species would surpass them. Fear that transcendence would make them obsolete. Fear that their understanding of reality was incomplete. So they eliminated every species that came close to achieving what they couldn't, Dr. Emma Green concluded. 3 million years of systematic genocide because they were afraid of being left behind. The archives also contained something else: detailed instructions for the next stage of galactic evolution. Dr. Sarah Johnson worked with ARIA to decrypt the precursor protocols, discovering that transcendence wasn't the end goal. It was just the beginning. The ancient civilization had achieved something beyond physical existence, becoming part of the universe's fundamental structure. "They're still here," Arya announced, her quantum consciousness interfacing directly with the precursor systems, not as individuals but as part of reality itself. They've been waiting for other species to join them. But first, the Council's reign of terror had to end. The Shadow Campaign entered its second phase. Instead of gathering intelligence, humanity began leaving calling cards. Council installations would find their systems temporarily disabled, with a single message left behind: "We remember." The message was in human script, a language the Council had believed extinct for 15 years. On the Council homeworld, panic began to set in as the implications became clear. In the emergency session called by High Chancellor Vorthak, fear was evident in every alien form around the chamber. "The humans survived," announced Council Enforcer Zixtal, his massive frame trembling with shock. "Somehow, they not only survived our stellar adjustment protocols, but they've been operating undetected in our space for years." "Impossible," protested the Verdari representative. "We confirmed the destruction of their homeworld, the elimination of their colonies." "The evidence is undeniable," Zixtal replied grimly. "These attacks show human tactical thinking, human technology signatures, and human symbolic messaging." Strategic analyst Zephyr sat quietly in his advisory position, watching the Council finally realize the scope of their mistake. As Alex Rodriguez, he felt a mix of satisfaction and pity for these ancient beings who had never learned to imagine anything beyond their own understanding. "What are your recommendations?" Vorthak asked his enforcer. "Full military mobilization. Deploy every available resource to hunt down." The revelation came at precisely 12 hours Galactic Standard Time across every world in Council space. On Zalaria Prime, the planet-wide communication network suddenly displayed images and data that contradicted 3 million years of official history. Citizens watched in stunned silence as evidence of systematic genocide unfolded before their eyes. Species after species eliminated not for aggression or expansion, but for the crime of evolving too quickly. On the crystal worlds of Andromeda, Beings of living light flickered with confusion and horror as they learned that their government had murdered civilizations that showed signs of achieving transcendence. On every council world, the same revelation played simultaneously. The complete truth about their civilization's blood-soaked foundation. In the council chambers, High Chancellor Vorthak stared at the displays with growing panic. How is this possible? Our security systems are impenetrable. Strategic analyst Zephyr stood calmly at his advisory position, but his human features had begun to shimmer and change. Your security was designed to stop conventional intrusion, Chancellor. It was never built to handle quantum consciousness manipulation. The disguise fell away, revealing Commander Alex Rodriguez in his modified human form. The council members recoiled in terror as they realized that their most trusted advisor was one of the extinct humans they had tried so desperately to eliminate. "You," Vorthak whispered, his ancient voice trembling. "You're supposed to be dead." Death is a concept that only applies to species limited by biological existence, Alex replied, his consciousness simultaneously monitoring operations across the galaxy. "We evolved beyond your ability to kill us." Council Enforcer Zixtal reached for his weapons, but found his armor systems completely unresponsive. Around the chamber, every piece of technology had been quietly infiltrated and neutralized by quantum, viruses that existed outside conventional computer networks. "Ladies, gentlemen, and other distinguished beings," Alex announced, his voice now broadcasting across the galaxy. "Allow me to introduce the truth about your beloved council." The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. 3 million years of systematic genocide, species after species eliminated for showing signs of rapid development. The complete records of 47 extinct civilizations, their cultures and achievements preserved by survivors who had hidden in the galactic wastes. But most damning of all were the Council's own internal documents, their private communications, discussing the management of younger species and the need to prevent any civilization from achieving transcendence. On the agricultural world of Verdania, farmers who had spent their lives in peaceful cultivation learned that their government had murdered billions of beings whose only crime was evolving too quickly. Riots began within hours. On the industrial planet of Titan's Edge, factory workers who had believed in the Council's mission of galactic stability discovered that their labor had supported a regime of unimaginable cruelty. Production ground to a halt as entire populations walked away from their posts. On the academic world of New Athens, scholars who had taught Council history as a tale of wise guardianship found themselves facing students who now knew the truth about their professors' complicity in genocide. But the most dramatic response came from the military itself. Admiral Kessestar of the Council Defense Fleet received the revelation while commanding a patrol near the Galactic Rim. As a career officer with 2 centuries of faithful service, she had built her entire identity around protecting galactic civilization from chaos and destruction. Now she learned that her fleet's primary mission had been enforcing a policy of systematic murder. "All ships. This is Admiral Kessestar," she broadcast to her fleet. "Stand down all weapon systems immediately. We will not be party to this abomination any longer." Similar scenes played out across Council space as military commanders grappled with the revelation that their entire careers had been built on a foundation of lies and genocide. In the hidden command center existing outside normal space-time, Admiral Dan Foster coordinated humanity's response to the chaos they had unleashed. Phase 3 is proceeding as planned, he reported to the assembled human leadership. Council military forces are in disarray. Civilian populations are in open revolt, and their government structure is collapsing. Dr. Emma Green monitored the IAC psychological impact across Council species. Guilt, horror, and rage are the dominant emotions. Some populations are calling for the immediate dissolution of the Council. Others are demanding that Council leaders face trial for their crimes. "What about resistance?" asked Kate Wilson. "Minimal," Dan replied. The hardline Council loyalists are concentrated in the central systems, but they're outnumbered by their own citizens. Most of the military has either defected or simply stopped following orders. But humanity's revelation wasn't just about exposing the Council's crimes. Hidden within the data broadcast was something far more important: evidence of the survivor populations and their current locations. For the first time in millennia, species that had believed themselves alone in the universe learned that others had escaped the Council's genocide. The Eternal Library received over 10,000 communication requests within the first hour after their location was revealed. The memory keepers, who had preserved the consciousness patterns of extinct species for 2,000 years, suddenly found themselves in contact with distant relatives they had thought lost forever. The Shadow Builders emerged from their hidden asteroid colonies to discover that their ancient enemies, the Time Walkers, had also survived and were ready to set aside old grudges in favor of justice. Most importantly, the revelation included detailed instructions for any species that wanted to begin the transcendence process. Dr. Sarah Johnson and Aria had worked with the Precursor Archives to create a guidebook for evolution beyond biological limitations. The Council prevented galactic civilization from achieving its natural evolution for 3 million years, the broadcast explained. Today, we return that stolen future to every species in the galaxy. High Chancellor Vorthak tried desperately to maintain control from the Council chambers, but his authority had evaporated. The communication systems that had allowed him to command a galaxy now carried only messages of condemnation and calls for justice. "Citizens of the galaxy," he broadcast in a final attempt to preserve his civilization. "These humans are terrorists who seek to destroy the order that has maintained peace for millennia. Do not believe their lies." But Alex Rodriguez was there to provide immediate contradiction. "Chancellor, your own archives confirm every piece of evidence we've presented. Your personal authorization appears on genocide orders for 47 different species." "The galaxy needed guidance," Vorthak protested, his composure finally cracking. "Young species are dangerous, unpredictable. Without our control, chaos would have consumed everything. The only chaos in this galaxy has been the Council's systematic murder of innocent civilizations," Alex replied calmly. "That ends today." The broadcast concluded with an invitation that changed everything. "To every species in the galaxy, you are invited to send representatives to a new gathering. Not a council of ancient powers imposing their will, but an assembly where every civilization, regardless of age or development level, will have an equal voice." The location was specified as the ancient precursor station in the galactic core, now reactivated and expanded by humanity's transcendent technology. Within days, ships began converging on the location from across the galaxy. Not just Council species, but survivors, hidden populations, and civilizations that had been developing, in secret for millennia. The Time Walkers arrived in vessels that existed in multiple temporal states. The Shadow Builders brought technology that could reshape matter at the quantum level. The memory keepers carried the preserved consciousness of beings who had died thousands of years ago, but could now be restored to new bodies. But perhaps the most significant arrival was that of Captain Paul Anderson, speaking for humanity itself. Paul had volunteered for the most extreme modifications possible, becoming something that could barely be called human anymore. His consciousness existed across multiple dimensions. His body could reshape itself at will, and his understanding of reality transcended anything the Council had ever imagined. When he materialized in the Council chambers, not through doors or corridors, but simply appearing as reality folded around him, the remaining Council members finally understood what they had awakened. "High Chancellor Vorthak," Paul said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to come from the structure of space-time itself. "You and your fellow council members are hereby summoned to face trial for crimes against galactic civilization." "We refuse your authority," Vorthak replied, trying to maintain dignity even as his world collapsed around him. "You misunderstand," Paul said gently. "This isn't a request." The council members found themselves unable to move, their bodies held in, placed by forces they couldn't comprehend. Around them, reality began to shift as Paul transported them, not through space, but through the quantum foundations of existence itself. When the transition completed, they stood in a vast chamber that defied conventional architecture. The jury was composed of representatives from every species the Council had tried to eliminate, including beings. The trial lasted 7 months and was broadcast across the galaxy in real time. In the great chamber of the precursor station, representatives from over 300 species watched as evidence was presented against the 12 Council members, who had ruled galactic civilization for 3 million years. President Rebecca Stone, elected by humanity's scattered populations to speak for their species, served as the chief prosecutor. Her body bore the modifications that allowed her to exist partially outside normal space-time, but she had retained enough of her original human appearance to remind everyone of what the Council had tried to destroy. "The evidence is clear and undeniable," she announced to the assembled jury. "For 3 million years, the Galactic Council has systematically eliminated any species that showed signs of rapid development or transcendence potential. 47 civilizations, representing billions of sentient beings, were murdered not for aggression or expansion, but for the crime of evolving too quickly. The prosecution presented testimony from survivors, documentation from the Council's own archives, and evidence gathered by human intelligence operations over 15 years. Each piece of evidence built an overwhelming case of systematic genocide on an unimaginable scale. High Chancellor Vorthak, now stripped of his ancient authority, attempted to defend his civilization's actions. "We maintained order," he insisted. "Without guidance, young species destroy themselves through warfare and expansion. We prevented galactic chaos." "You prevented galactic evolution," replied Elder Tamvor of the Keepers, one of the survivor species. "How many discoveries were lost when you eliminated the builders? How many philosophical advances died with the thinkers? How much art and culture was destroyed when you murdered the creators?" The testimonies were heartbreaking. Survivors described millennia of hiding, living in constant fear that the Council would discover their remnant populations. Children who had been born in exile, never knowing their species' homeworld because it had been destroyed before they existed. But the most damning evidence came from the precursor archives themselves. Dr. Greg Martinez had spent months translating the ancient records with help from transcended human consciousness patterns. What he found changed everyone's understanding of galactic history. The Council didn't just eliminate 47 species, he announced to the stunned assembly. According to these records, they prevented over 600 civilizations from achieving transcendence. Most were destroyed so early in their development that they never reached interstellar travel. The number was staggering. 600 potential transcendent civilizations, eliminated because they showed signs of rapid development. The Council hadn't just committed genocide, they had prevented the galaxy from achieving its natural evolutionary destiny for millions of years. Dr. Sarah Johnson and Aria presented evidence that transcendence was the natural endpoint of intelligent development. Every species, given enough time and freedom, eventually evolves beyond biological limitations. The Council has been fighting against the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The defense arguments grew increasingly desperate. As the trial continued, Council enforcer Zixtel attempted to justify their actions by claiming that rapid development inevitably led to warfare and expansion. "Look at your own species," he said to President Stone. "Humans reached space and immediately began military expansion. You developed weapons that could crack planets. Without our intervention, you would have threatened established civilizations. We developed those weapons after learning that someone was trying to kill us," Rebecca replied calmly. "Our expansion was driven by the need to survive your genocide attempts. The aggression you fear was actually your own creation." The trial revealed the tragic irony at the heart of the Council's philosophy. By eliminating species that showed rapid development, they had created the very threats they claimed to prevent. Species that discovered the Council's genocidal policies naturally became militaristic in response to existential threat. But the most significant moment came when Captain Paul Anderson testified about humanity's transcendence process. "The Council fears what they don't understand," he said, his multidimensional presence making reality shimmer in the chamber. "They see transcendence as loss of control, chaos, unpredictability. But transcendence actually brings greater wisdom, deeper empathy, and enhanced cooperation." To demonstrate, Paul invited the jury to experience transcended consciousness directly. Using abilities the Council couldn't comprehend, he temporarily elevated volunteer representatives to see reality from a transcendent perspective. The effects were immediate and profound. Species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly understood each other's perspectives completely. Ancient grudges dissolved as beings experienced the interconnectedness of all consciousness. "This is what the Council prevented," Paul explained as the volunteers returned to normal awareness. "Not chaos, but understanding. Not aggression, but empathy. They stopped the galaxy from achieving its full potential because they couldn't imagine anything beyond their own limitations." The verdict was unanimous. All 12 Council members were found guilty of genocide, crimes against sentient consciousness, and systematic prevention of galactic evolution. But the sentence surprised many observers. "The punishment for the accused will be education," announced Chief Justice Colthus, speaking for the tribunal. "They will experience the consciousness of every being whose death they ordered. They will understand the fear, pain, and loss they caused. Only when they fully comprehend the magnitude of their crimes will they be allowed to choose their final fate." It was a uniquely transcendent form of justice. Rather than execution or imprisonment, the Council members would be forced to truly understand what they had done. For beings who had lived for millennia without ever experiencing empathy for their victims, it would be the ultimate punishment. High Chancellor Vorthak collapsed as the sentence was carried out, experiencing for the first time the terror of species facing extinction, the grief of civilizations watching their children die, the despair of survivors hiding in galactic wastelands for millennia. Within hours, all 12 council members begged for mercy, but the process continued until they had experienced every death they had ordered, every civilization they had destroyed, every potential future they had prevented. When it ended, some chose death rather than live with the knowledge of what they had done. Others, broken by understanding, chose to dedicate their remaining lives to atoning for their crimes. But the trial was only the beginning. The new Galactic Assembly convened in the precursor station, now expanded into a vast complex that existed, partially outside normal space-time. Every species, regardless of development level or population size, received equal representation. The Time Walkers brought technology that allowed truly democratic decision-making across galactic distances. The Memory Keepers provided historical context to prevent future mistakes. The Shadow Builders offered construction capabilities to rebuild what the Council had destroyed. Humanity's contribution was perhaps the most important. They shared the transcendence protocols freely with any species that chose to pursue them. Evolution is not something to be feared or controlled, President Rebecca Stone announced in her address to the Assembly. It's the natural birthright of all conscious beings. Today, we return that birthright to the galaxy. Within the first year, 17 species began transcendence programs. Within 5 years, over 100 civilizations were pursuing various forms of consciousness enhancement and biological transcendence. The galaxy began to transform in ways the Council had prevented for millions of years. Species that had been enemies for millennia found common ground through shared consciousness experiences. Technologies were shared freely, leading to advances that benefited everyone. Dr. Emma Martinez established the Archive of the Lost, a vast memorial to the species, eliminated by the Council. Using technology from the Memory Keepers and consciousness patterns preserved in the precursor archives, they began restoring extinct civilizations to new forms of existence. The first restoration was of the Builders, a species eliminated 50,000 years earlier for developing matter manipulation technology. When their consciousness patterns were restored to new transcendent bodies, they wept at seeing their ancient enemies, the Time Walkers, still alive. "We thought we were alone," whispered First Builder Zenath, her consciousness spanning multiple realities. "We thought everyone had forgotten us." "No one is forgotten," replied Time Walker Velshan, reaching across 50 millennia of separation to embrace his people's ancient rivals. And no one will be alone again. The Restoration Project became the galaxy's greatest undertaking. 1.